right, good afternoon. My name is Beth Spears. I'm a solutions consultant with TIBCO Software with a focus in the healthcare and the B2B market spaces. So just a little bit about, I'm going to give you my disclaimer, the obligatory disclaimer, saying that anything I say today can change in the future, so don't hold me liable for it. So TIBCO is an enterprise software solutions company with over 10,000 customers worldwide, and you can see from the logos on the screen that we cover almost every vertical in the industry there is. We don't just specify in one particular, we go across all. And we've been around since 1997, so we do have a lot of experience behind us. Today, TIBCO is Connected Intelligence, and Connected Intelligence is the ability to capture data from any source, understand the context of that data in real time, and then combine it with the knowledge that you have within your organization and add models to it so that you can make business decisions in a matter of minutes or as you need them, and then put action against it. And TIBCO does this with two key capabilities, one being the ability to interconnect everything and anything. We will connect data sources, applications, technology, your people, your processes, applications, anywhere they are, whether they're in the cloud or on-prem, TIBCO will interconnect them. And secondly, we augment intelligence. We have a broad offering of analytics tools that you can see visual analytics, you can see streaming analytics, you can have embedded analytics, which gives you the capability to make those decisions, to take the data that you have and make it informative information. So about my application today. Typically with FHIR applications, it's focused on the provider or the consumer. But in this case, the demos that I'm going to show you today are more payer-focused. In today's market, HIPAA mandates how payers and providers exchange data, and it's typically by EDI. Your enrollments, your eligibility, your claims, your prior authorizations, your payments, that's all done by an X12-based transaction set. However, there is no mandate on how payers and providers have to exchange health records. Right now, payers are collecting that information by phone, by fax, by email, by US mail, and even in worst case, they're sending a nurse to the provider's location to copy and retrieve that information. So you can imagine this is very costly, not only for the payer, but also for the provider. FHIR is the one opportunity to make this process a lot better. You can make it electronic and it'll be automated. TIBCO has an offering for payers that they can set up processes to make these API calls, whether they're manually triggered or they're automatically triggered. So as I mentioned, there's the two ways that a payer is going to request information. It can be manual, in which a human initiates the request, or automatic, where the data within the EDI transaction, the prior authorization, the claim, whatever it may be, triggers the request. So I have two video recordings of demos because I didn't trust myself to do it live. The first one is on the manual trigger, where a human initiates the request. This would be as if a nurse is looking at a patient's files and determines that additional information is needed, maybe an x-ray or lab results, and she'll enter in information in a web form of some sort and submit the information, and she gets back the medical records that she needs. And what you'll see, the TIBCO product that is being used, is just the Business Works orchestration suite, and it allows the payer to create a process to go out and get that information. So let's take a look.
Here is a sample user interface which we created for this demo. It simply allows a person to manually enter a patient's ID into one of the fields and retrieve the respective FHIR resource data. In this case, we can retrieve the patient and/or the medical records data. First, we select the FHIR server we want to call. This would typically be the provider's EHR system, but in this case, we are using Epic and Cerner's public FHIR servers. I will select Cerner, enter in the patient ID, and click Get Record. The patient record data is retrieved from the Cerner FHIR server and displayed on the screen. I can also do the same for the medical records, and the patient's medical records appear on the screen. So how does all this work? Well, behind the scenes we have a workflow running. This is TIBCO's BusinessWorks Integration Orchestration Suite. All of the components used in this workflow come out of the box. The workflow is initiated when the person enters the patient ID in the user interface, and a web service call is activated. Depending on which FHIR server is being called will depend on which path is taken. On this transition line, there is a condition. If it is Cerner, then the top path will be taken, whereas the bottom path will be taken if it is Epic or something other than Cerner is selected. The first activity invokes the REST API. You can see here on the general pane that we have defined the resource path. It is a HTTP GET command, and we have request and response type as JSON. On the input pane of this activity, you see that the patient ID entered in the user interface is mapped to the GET command. We will then parse the JSON data into a database. You can see that the information retrieved, such as given name, date of birth, address, are all mapped into the database. And finally, in this last activity, we display the information retrieved onto the screen.
Okay, so in this second demo, it's the automatic trigger. And that's where we're looking at a 837 claim data file. And we're looking for a diagnosis of diabetes. If diabetes diagnosis exists, then we trigger that same API request that we just saw. However, in this demo, we've added some additional features so that payers could see what more they could do with the EHR data that's coming into them via FHIR, and to show what you can do with the TIBCO Connected Intelligence platform. This is a way to distribute that information throughout your organization. So when we bring the information back in on this one, we are adding a risk score to the patient based on the medical records that came back, and we're viewing it in our SpotFHIR analytics tool. And then we're also adding a business process application to this demo, where we will send a notification to the diabetes specialist so they know that information was requested and they receive that actual information and they can act upon it. Let's take a look at this one.
Here's another TIBCO BusinessWorks workflow in which an 837 claim is validated, translated, and parsed into an XML canonical format. From the parsed data, it is determined if the diagnosis requires additional information and/or is considered high risk. For this demo, we are looking for adult diabetes and child diabetes diagnosis codes. On this transition line, we have a rule that looks for those codes specifically. They are the E08 and the O24 in the ABK element. If these values are present in the 837 claim data, then a request for the patient's medication will be initiated by the FHIR API. You can see here that we have a resource path defined, and it is an HTTP GET with the request and response types as JSON. On the Input tab, we have mapped the patient ID information taken from the data. We then parse the JSON data and put the records into a database. Additionally, a risk score is given to the patient and also entered into a database. The risk scores are then viewed in a dashboard report highlighting which patients fall above, below, and at the medium risk level. To end the process, we render an XML for the UI that we had seen before, and an HTTP request is sent to the business process management activity, sending the appropriate diabetes specialist the retrieved information in their queue. So let's see how this all works. I'm going to save some data. Here's my 837 EDI data, and my ABK01 is E08. So as I save this, it's going to kick off the process. You'll see it go through the flows. And the HTTP request has been sent. Now let's go see our results. So if we go over to our FHIR reporting dashboard and refresh the data, we will see a new entry for Wilma, which was the patient that we retrieved the information for. Gives us her practitioner information and the medical records and the diagnosis as diabetes. Over here on the far right is where we have implemented the risk scoring. You can see down below Wilma falls right at the median risk line and is not considered heavy risk. However, there are other patients that have fallen above the risk noted by their color. Now, if we go over to our business process management queue and sign in as our adult diabetes specialist, we will see the information that was sent to me. So here's the queue that came in today, adult diabetes specialist. If I click on that, I can see the information for Wilma with her medication, and I can either accept or reject this information or configure it however I need to. In this case, we'll hit submit, and the information has been submitted, and I as a specialist know that it was requested.
Okay, so you've seen how TIBCO's Connected Intelligence platform gives payers the ability to incorporate multiple digital platforms within their association. FHIR is a way that can change the way payers receive health records electronically and utilize that data across their organization to improve processes for the benefit of us. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be at the sessions in the afternoon. Thanks.